Sawete mihi nomen est Stella et hoc est Barco the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 265 for October MMXXV. Barco the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So, if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, this guy on my screen should look familiar. It's my good friend, Harrison. He goes by many names, half of which I've dubbed him. But he also has a pseudonym that he's writing under, Kim Jung-ho. And in this capacity for this particular episode, this is a serious interview to talk about his work, Martian Sun, as the actual imprint, and What Divine Anguish, which is the first volume under that imprint, which is a sci-fi horror anthology graphic novel that is on sale now. If you can believe, there is a little biography of Kim Jung-ho. Look at this. We are told that he is a lifelong sci-fi writer, and science fiction is a genre defined by the what if question. If ever you encounter Jung-ho in the wild, he may appear confused. Look at even right now, even lost. But in fact, he's only asking what if. If he appeared, you're shaking your head, but
Cringeworthy.
you wrote this
No,
biography.
it was AI generated.
Okay. If he appears to be asking what if in proximity to dangerous objects or great heights, please gently intervene. Martian
So
Sun is the product of such speculation brought to life by artistic talent from all around the world.
that part's
So,
true.
yes, welcome to the show, Harrison Chute, my good friend, and also Kim Jung Ho.
Thank you for having both of us on.
Yes. Now, we were joking about a conflict of interest
Mhm.
because I'm a good friend of yours, but I'm also hosting this podcast. You have called me your manager, I think for good reason, because I've pushed you to do many things and you're coming to a Comic Con and I'm going to be helping you out and everything. But this is a very serious interview. I'm like looking to delve into your work and I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited also to get it out there and hopefully people look up your work and buy this graphic novel. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And the hard hitting questions, just because we're friends, doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire, as they say. I'm going to start with the basics. How did you get into writing? Which is probably a broad question, but just how did we get to this point? But we'll start with writing, and then I'll also ask about comics later.
When I think of it and I try to think of the pithy answer, which might just be the true one, I think it's just I write because I don't know how to talk, which obviously makes this sort of thing difficult. But I have found that uh, writing just feels more natural. And I think over time it just kind of became a compunction, or not compunction, a compulsion, especially with like opinion writing and media criticism, which is what I've been doing in um, making second nature almost my entire life, when I wish I'd actually been doing that with fiction writing. But that one's it's a little harder, but hopefully I'm getting there.
Do you feel like because you do a lot of editorials for your own site, in particular about films, I would say films and TV shows and things like that. Do you feel like doing that really helped you to find your voice in these the works that we see here with these comics, or do you think that they're separate, they're kind of on their own?
Well, if I could play politician, I think it's both. I think the only thing it really did is help me find my voice and help me write with confidence. But story construction and story deconstruction, I found are completely separate disciplines. And unfortunately, I would say that one is harder than the other.
Yeah. And I would say that in your analyses of different films and TV shows, you probably get a sense of what's a good story and what's not a good story. And you can kind of go from there and craft your own, knowing what you prefer.
Right. But
How
my
did
taste is so
you?
bad that
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've mentioned it on this show, but a peek behind the curtain is that Harry and I I would say like 90% of the time disagree. And that is not an exaggeration. Like
No,
it's
very
shocking
sad.
when we agree.
Yes.
So just FYI, but yeah, but I enjoyed your work here. And of course, I've got some
Thank you.
questions to deep dive in, but I'm not one to blow smoke. I think you know that, and other people know that. So just FYI, I think that is good. I think people should go and pick this up.
Thank
It's
you.
a comic. It's a comics, well, several comics, graphic novel, anthology. How did you get into comics? What's your history with comics? And then why did you decide this as the medium for it when you could have gone, other ways, like short story format potentially?
Right. Yeah, I actually come from a film background, which is overstating it. I did go to film school, but that is the cinematic language is the one that I am most familiar with. I have a really hard time with prose, both reading and writing it. So I think comics was kind of like I don't want to say that it was like my last bastion, but it's not something that like I grew up really loving, like you and perhaps Donovan Morgan Grant, who's been on the show before.
Thank you for that.
For those, if this is your first episode of BTO.
Yeah.
Um, but it was reading not only Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud as a lad, but his entire trilogy, reinventing and then I think making that helped me understand the discrete differences, but also the similarities. And so my love of comics actually kind of came from the desire to write and draw them, which is I didn't draw anything in Martian Sun as yet, except for the about page image, which is obviously not professional. Um, but I mean, I think I used to like drawing as a kid, and I did draw comics when I was younger, but as a more serious approach, yeah, that definitely it wasn't my first choice, and I think that I need to be honest with that and with myself. But I think that ultimately, um, yeah, with Martian Sun and with this process, I really came to appreciate, and hopefully, I found the right expressions for these stories in that medium because not all of them were designed for that initially.
I see a similarity between screenwriting and comic writing. You'll have to tell me if you disagree with that, just because how I've seen scripts is very much broken down. And even if I were to think about plays as well, broken down with stage directions, and you would see, emotions listed out like that. Whereas with comics, you've got panel by panel and you have to be very explicit about like what is this person doing. Did you feel like or do you feel like your film background lent itself to that, or do you think that they are completely different?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some transition. I think certainly dialogue is the same, and even scene direction to a certain extent. The differences, I think, are pacing. And because I mean, I try, especially with short stories and comics, like it's like one scene per page, whereas in film and television, of course, you get like maybe 4 minutes for a scene or as a ceiling. And that was hard, or not hard, but that was something to keep in mind. But yeah, and certainly just thinking visually, uh, yeah, a lot. I think maybe more overlap, but I am sympathetic to the idea that we don't want comic books to just be like storyboards, and certainly not for like this medium, which does not have like a lot of money in it, to just be like a springboard into a career in film or something like that.
Yeah. So when we get to the name, right? Martian Sun, what is that? How did that come about, and why did you choose that particular branding?
Yeah, Martian Sun was the store or the name of a story that I never was able to fully develop, and obviously it has a sort of sci-fi sounding connotation, but also it's just like, well, the Martian sun is the same as the Earth sun, but it's just like we're seeing it from a different angle. And that was big, my light bulb. I was like, oh, that should be it then. And I just like the way it sounds.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever get back to that story? Do you think you will ever complete it?
Maybe I found out that it was a little bit too similar to an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, if you can believe that.
Oh,
The one where they go up in a rocket and come back to Earth and they think it's an alien planet. Like that was basically the story.
Oh, that also
Yeah.
sounds like Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that's probably where they got it from. I mean, that's the thing with science fiction. It's all, it's very, yeah,
Yeah. And the idea of is there any new and original idea
right.
too? Yeah, which we've talked
Only in
about.
this one.
There you go. Only in What Divine Anguish. Yeah. I'm going to run through the story titles and then the blurb that you have set out on your site just to give people a taste. And then I have some overarching questions. And then there are a couple that I might want, deep dive in. And then if there's any that you want to deep dive in, and then absolutely we can talk about it. And of course, there's one story that I'm going to be asking you some questions about, the one that I've always gone after you for.
Yeah.
So we begin with profane worship, which I think actually is my favorite.
Okay.
So we set these, this is the blurb here. So we set these young tributes to the sea, praying for our harvest and thinking not once of their possible return, dot,
What
dot,
does that
dot.
mean? What is that a description? What?
Well,
It's
I mean, it's
BS.
just supposed to pull you in. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
The protocol, the sole inhabitant of a space station awakens to an alien attack and must reconcile with his past in order to survive. My devil, a reformed gangster, is tempted by a vengeful woman to kill once again. The world wife. If your neighbor bought a sex robot, you'd want them to be a little discreet, right? Attack of the Snake Men. A lone warrior is all that stands between a feudal village and the reptilian menace. Kind of gave me Kiss of the Basilisk feels, I do have to say. The biography of Charles King. A team races against the clock to save the world's most inconvenient man. Other fish. Sherry's jealous ex boyfriend is taking self improvement very seriously. Revenant Lane. Beth lost the man of her dreams, so she decides to reassemble him. And they're watching us. There's nothing more human than the average American sitcom. Do you have a favorite? This is like children, right? Do you have a favorite story of the ones that listed here? Because you, of course, could be working as we know.
Yeah, that's tough. I think I was very satisfied by when I was getting the art back for Attack of the Snake Man. I felt like that was like it was like a perfect marriage of style and story. And I think that that one is kind of like it's very succinct. I think it's only 8 pages, and it takes a lot of the themes that the other ones have, and even the structure, to be honest, and just like compresses it into like a good punchline. So that one I've always found satisfying. Um, so yeah, it's Attack of the Snake Man.
What is this is also another tough question, but what is your creative process? Like, how does this all begin from, I guess, the germ of the idea to setting down and writing and then sending things off?
A lot of these were stories that I've been working on for a while now, 10 years, because some of them, like Charles King was, I think, like college. I was trying to write that, and even the protocol, which sounds unbelievable because it's so simple, but they were much longer stories. And so a lot of the creative process was really just like paring them down. So I suppose the unspoken part is just that like indescribable process of developing them over years and putting them away and coming back to them and being like, this is never going to work, or, maybe there's something here. But for this specifically, yeah, it was definitely paring down, finding the essentials of the story and finding I mean, because this is the first time that I was ever working with artists. So it was like, what can I show them that I won't feel embarrassed about? What can I show another set of eyes? And that was actually like a pretty good like expurgating exercise. And so I think maybe in more philosophical terms, the creative process is I don't know, I guess I try to think from the reader's perspective as much as possible, and I try to give them something concrete. And I maybe that's part of the perspective that comes from a an experience with media criticism that a lot of the times, you watch a movie or I'll watch a movie and just be like, there's nothing happening here. Like, what's the substance or like, is there going to be some sort of an event? I felt that about a recent front runner for Best Picture, which shall not be named, but so with this, it was always like, what is sort of concrete that I can show, like an image even, or a character moment or something like that.
Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, I wish this was a better answer, but a lot of it is just like, um, just like watching movies and thinking like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? Basically that sort of like second generation, like, I don't know, Quentin Tarantino, like storyteller. Because a lot of these stories, I hope, should feel familiar, but they should kind of feel like things that are happening like a little bit stage left of the more familiar story. I could tell you specifically that Profane Worship came from rewatching the original Godzilla movie because they actually mention an old ritual about sending off girls to sea to sacrifice to the sea god. And I thought, well, I'm already sort of thinking about a giant monster that comes back. So what if that monster was one of those girls? Um, and that was like right as soon as I had that idea, I just like wrote it and sent it off to the artist. But some of these are they stretch back so far that I can't even remember where they
Yeah.
came from.
Well, it gets back to your bio that you were laughing at about the what ifs sort of
Yeah.
thing. So turning it on its head. So the artists, the colorists, the letterers differ between stories.
Mhm.
And you're sending it off to people. You've got your descriptions and everything. How much creative reins do you give your artists, and how much do you try to control the output of yeah, what they're doing?
Especially as a first timer, I try to give them as much control as possible. Um, and I think we're just too scared to like give like any sort of direction. But truthfully, I just want to see like I want to see their interpretation of the story, what they make of the writing. Um, I think the only memorable example I could think of where I really had to like take a firm hand was with the World Wife, actually, because there's a scene where, well, one of the main props is a hunting rifle, which I think is like a particularly specific gun because it's one of the only guns that isn't designed to kill people. And it's very like Americana. And the artist, Alex, who lives in Brazil, showed me pencils, and the gun was an AK-47. Which is, the least American gun. And he was like, I don't know guns. And I thought about like maybe just keeping that. I was like, maybe it could work. Like he's like an extreme guy, but I was like, no, I have to change this. And it was like kind of painful for me. So uh that sort of artistic cowardice, I think, has created something that I hope is like, purely coming from uh their imaginations, or at least not just mine. Like I'm not like super strict, I guess.
Well, I would say the most shocking art for me was honestly in the biography of Charles King, because up till then, more or less, like the art was pretty similar throughout the stories, with, of course, creative flair thrown in there. But when I got to that, and it felt very, 60s, and of course, it's during the time, or at least what I perceived during the time of the space race between the US and Russia, that it really felt like it fit that. And that was their own idea to come up with that. That was not something that you asked them to do.
That was something I sought out.
Oh, okay.
The artist, Christian, had kind of a retro feel already, which I appreciated, but then it was the colorist, Brandon Cable, who, like, that's like his style, is to do like a very retro, almost like newspaper kind of quality, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, felt very 60s Spider-Man for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly a smaller page count. I think the longest might be like 18, if I'm not misremembering. They're one shots, so they're one and done. And they're also stories that begin in medias res, right in the middle of things. Can you talk about your decision making process that went into having these three things be true, that they're one shots, you're not going to have, multi parts, you're just going to start right in the middle of the action, and yeah, shorter page count?
Okay. Unfortunately, and I don't mean to sidestep your question, but none of those I think were conscious decisions, or at
Okay.
least that's not how I was kind of thinking about it. They were just like, uh, yeah, because Martian Sun as a project was kind of just an outgrowth of me trying to break in, I guess, into comics, and by leveraging a lot of these old stories and some new ones. And so it was kind of a practical concern that I simply could not pay for a series or anything like that or a long story. And I also just think that it's um, important when starting out to start as small as possible. That was always the advice that I'd been given, like even from my mother, like, start small, start with something small. Because obviously, when you're a kid and you're full of ambitions, you think you can make the next epic. But, how do you write with economy? How do you write with, that those are things that you need to figure out as soon as possible. And then you can expand if needed. But, yeah, and so that kind of I think it was Nabokov or the guy who wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, who has like the 10 rules, and one of them is start as close to the end as possible. I do like that. Um, I get kind of antsy about like stories starting, so I like to just have it start as soon as possible.
Kurt
Thank you. It was
Vonnegut.
Kurt Vonnegut, and you'll edit that so it makes
Yeah,
me
I'll
look
feed
good.
it into you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any plans to break from any of these traditions that you have unconsciously developed, do you think?
I mean, I love to keep doing these short stories. I don't think it's financially viable, and obviously we'll find out in Baltimore. But I think the next step would be like maybe a mini series. Um, so yeah, hopefully we'll see.
Fingers crossed, yeah. What sort of difficulties are there in doing in medias res storytelling? Like, do you have to actually plot backwards to understand like where these characters came from, or do you just start like where we're reading?
Hmm. I think maybe that could be it. I do like having a firm ending in mind, and obviously with short stories, that's easier than like on television. But I think one of the complications, which is something that a note I got back from one of the stories I'm working on now, is that like character can sometimes be overlooked in terms of like establishing like who these people are and why we should care about them. Um, Especially because I think that short stories tend to be more about like themes or plot rather than character, which isn't wholly true. I think that's just something that I conjured, but that is a drawback that I suppose I'm still struggling with.
Do you do any character biographies that only you would see?
I, I don't suppose I did.
Okay. I just
Uh,
wondered. Well, because I think about the protocol, for instance, I think we get enough of the story to understand what the relationship is between the husband and the wife.
yeah,
But then there's also this question of how did that child die? Was it an accident? Is one of them, maybe to blame? And that's where some. So I just wondered if
yeah.
there's any
Well, I didn't mean
background.
to laugh and make light. I was just like, gosh, did I? And then maybe I did. I mean, these stories were published actually 2 years ago for the most
Yeah.
part. But I mean, I think maybe just enough to get the idea down, but I understand that like it's kind of a romantic idea to do like a lot of world building and
Sure.
really understand things. And I do that for longer stories that have yet to see the light of day, but for these short ones, I think yeah, it's very idea first and character
Gotcha.
second.
Okay. Your stories also have a wide range of identities that are represented, I think mostly in terms of race.
Uh,
And I wondered if this was something that you keep track of so that, the characters are not lopsided, one type of person over another. Do you consciously keep track of that?
yes, unfortunately, it is not something that I just like think to do automatically. And I think really it comes down to, well, it's hard too, because a lot of these are like doomed protagonists or like jerks who die. So it's like, is that something that people are really going to want to identify with? But in terms of the broader sense of representation, I'm always thinking about Asian guys because if I'm not thinking about that, then who will? And Black women because they're just, Asian men are sort of underrepresented, Black women are often misrepresented. And so, yes, but sometimes, yeah, it's hard, but it's something you always got to keep in mind, I guess.
Do you have any plans to broaden your cast in terms of gender representation or orientation?
Yeah, it's funny because I really like my favorite media is like action women kind of stuff, and that's like nothing like in this comic book because they are just like these short ironic stories about people who get killed and stuff. Um, I mean, I tried to capture that on the cover as best as I could. Thank you, Nayara, for the art. But yeah, that would definitely be something better suited to a longer form story and with like an actual heroine, which I don't think really comes into play with these stories.
Yeah. Though then you do have to be careful not to kill off if you happen to have a queer
Right.
character because then you'd be falling into the bury your gaze trope.
Hmm.
So we can't be having that.
No.
Okay. So let's see. A running theme that I saw in through several of your stories. And this is interesting because I was talking about reading these and that, this was going to happen. I guess maybe it was Wednesday and I said I saw some themes and you said, "Huh, I don't know what sorts of themes." So it's interesting, when you talk to someone else and they see it from a different perspective, which is very
Right.
much the idea of Martian Sun. So obviously, some of these things you're here as the author and you can say like, no, that's a stretch and everything. But, these are some things that I saw, but I did see revenge, stories of revenge as a theme that popped up. I saw that in the let me see here, Attack of the Snake Men to a certain extent, from the reptilian tribe to against the humans, the World Wife, My Devil, profane worship, like just to name some of those. I know that you enjoy revenge films. Rape revenge is also, no, you don't like those?
It's complicated.
It is complicated, but I do, well, because you've said like, hey, we should watch this film. Like, I don't really want to watch that film. But yeah, what was this intentional? Is this something that you see, or is it no, you're off base on this one?
My Devil specifically was meant to be a love letter to Korean revenge cinema, movies
Okay.
like Old Boy and I Saw the Devil. I specifically spoke or talked with the colorist about, getting those like hot greens and oranges. But for the most part, I mean, I don't think you're off base. Well, I should say, I don't think you're off base at all. For the most part, these stories, despite coming from different times in my life, I was kind of shocked when collating them together that they follow very similar scripts. And I guess I personally wouldn't say revenge so much as like the overarching theme, even if it is a recurring one. Uh, I think it's really the mental processes of violence. Because in a lot of these stories, even if it's like a computer, like in the protocol, it's about going from zero to kill. And like, what does that look like for, the average person or for, a warrior in Conan times? And, is that, or, just to kind of look at that and think about it. And it was kind of gross to realize that that was something that I was so hung up on. But I know where it comes from, which is like one Vietnam War unit that we did in like sophomore year English class where I learned about post-traumatic stress for the first time. And I just thought it was uh, like awful that you go off to war and it just never leaves you. And um, a lot of my like independent scholarship as a young lad was researching the end of war and if war was natural, if that was something we could ever remove from human society. And there were a lot of like logical points made about how much the military has to condition the human mind into killing and committing violence, which gives me a lot of hope. And I think that really stuck with me over the years, and like apparently filtered down into these stories.
Is there also a bit of catharsis that you're searching for with because that final act of violence for potentially profane worship or my devil, like that person finally reaches it? Are you also looking for that kind of at the climax?
Yeah, there's definitely a weird tension there because I do like celebrate the that violence at the end. I mean, the climax of profane worship and Attack of the Statement are identical. And that's something that I'd like really like to see. Like I like movies like The Man from Nowhere, which has a really cathartic, violent ending, or yeah, things like that. Um, yes, I do really like revenge movies. If anybody's heard or seen Harakiri from 1956, that's like one of the best ones. But yeah, so all these things are kind of in my head, I suppose.
And yet not a fan of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Well, I haven't read the books. I like the movie,
Okay.
but well, the American movie, I should say. I haven't seen the
Yeah,
Swedish
I was
ones.
about to say which version of that
Yeah.
are you enjoying? Yeah. You also, I would say, take contemporary issues that we should all be aware of, whether or not we're thinking about them every day, but things that are actually happening in our lives, and add a twist. I think that makes one consider real life implications, the what if of all of this. So I sort of I think of They're Watching Us. I mean, it was definitely it was a sitcom as the setting, but as I was reading it, I really felt like it spoke a lot to the current nature of a reality television, where you can never tell what is scripted and what is not. And it seems like sometimes the producers and things really push boundaries, perhaps to an unhealthy degree, to get things. I mean, obviously They're Watching Us is an extreme, right? But it certainly reminded me of that. The biography of Charles King, I think, had some political implications, that people are playing this long game and they bring someone in who's thinking that they're doing the right thing and sticking up for somebody, but they're actually being used for, the other party's agenda. The World Wife, I think it's not only, we've discussed, you've said that it's become overdone now, but this idea of to what extent, do synthetics or androids have a soul, or, like what is real and what is not with them, as well as because it is a sex toy, and because we know that sex toys are becoming more realistic, and there are other scary implications that you and Donovan have talked about on your own show that I won't bring up here. I think that's also something that's contemporary. Um, yeah, are these things that you are considering when you're coming up with different story ideas? I mean, we already talked about your inspiration in mostly in films, but do you also feel like current state of life and being is also something that's in the background of your head, and asking those what if questions with those things?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be plugged into what's going on politically and in the world out there. I really would like to write timeless stories though, which is why I don't ever have like a Chiron of like, this takes place in 1700s or whatever. And that can be hard, but um, yeah, I don't know. It might just be one of those happy accidents of like, trying to have a grasp of these different issues, and then again, they just sort of filter down naturally based on what the rhythm of the story is. Um, and that was, I mean, there is some conscious navigation there because Charles King, like, I was really trying to make sure that that was not a parable for cancel culture because it is about like the whole world wants this guy dead. And so I had to really frame that as like, no, this guy like sucks. But yeah, it's hard, but yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay. So profane worship. One of the reasons why I really like this is, for me, it harkens back to mythology. And I think I may have mentioned this when I had seen maybe pencils, I think that you had sent in just a few pages, and maybe gave me the tagline of what it is. But Iphigenia is someone that I think about a lot, whether it's because, I'm teaching stuff that surrounds the Trojan War, or of course reading the Iliad. But Agamemnon sacrificed his own daughter in order to have a blessing from Artemis for good winds. And so I just think about the repercussions of what would be. And then also, I was thinking today that there's a nice connection to Shirley Jackson's Lottery, where, the townspeople have all agreed that, I think it's yearly, right? Someone is going to get killed, and you've got this lottery.
Mhm.
Are you making any sort of commentary, though, about either religion, right? Because that's the danger of it, is that people could be following something, and they're told that this is the reason why we're doing it, but it's ending lives, and then the repercussions for that, or even like social commentary for this story.
Um, as well, I remember being blown away by the lottery in school, and that was like one of my favorite short stories. I can't believe I didn't even think of it, but yeah, I mean that was probably like the bones of profane worship, that horror that comes from being at sort of a cultural crossroads and realizing something. Um, but in that case, I think there was also an element of like forgetting the past and pretending like it didn't exist. So I think that can be something that is something we're seeing today, that we're forsaking a lot of history, American history, because it's inconvenient to our political agendas. And this story is kind of positing like, well, what if there was some grand cosmic justice that set that right? Because it's a terrible thing, and it's something that like a lot of authoritarian governments do, and that is something of which I am not a fan. So I think that's kind of where the story's coming from.
Gotcha. Redemption. I don't know if you and I have talked about our belief systems in terms of redemption. I feel like it's something that is near. It like hovers in your story, but it just stays out of reach for many of them. Like characters can't reach that redemption. Charles King, um, trying to think of the ones that I think Revenant Lane potentially is one that I could say. Other fish. Um, the world wife is a complicated one. My devil for sure. There's a lot of because the whole argument is like we've changed that sort of thing. Let me get back to my question about redemption here. Is that just like a conceit that you have, or do you feel like these stories properly reflect the world in which we're living, and that redemption for anyone is just difficult to come by?
I have a maybe inflated sense of optimism for a writer and like the human condition. I tend to believe in people, but with short stories especially, and especially the short story tradition from which I'm pulling, like the Twilight Zone and even Black Mirror to some extent. Like those stories are really mean, and they tend to end, ironically and with tragedy. And that's what I like and kind of don't like about them. But that is definitely what I was kind of trying to go for here. So I think that the hovering, which is interesting, just comes from that belief, but ultimately, yeah, just can't be attained because of external forces or
Mm-hmm.
their own folly.
Gotcha. Okay, so it does not reflect your belief system.
No, not necessarily.
You're putting all the negative things on page so you don't have to live with it. I
That's right.
understand. Another theme I noticed, especially as it came to men and women in a relationship together, is that the man is the one who adds the majority of negative qualities to the relationship. I would say Revenant Lane, her husband is, I would say he's on the line of being abusive. He seems angry. We're told that he's angry and emotionally closed off. We kind of get that sense from the wife, and even the brother-in-law. He seems nice, but he's got some, I think, jealousy issues. The protocol, I think that is complicated because of the grief that their relationship is surrounding. But he even admits that he didn't, I think, give her much room in that grief, and it seemed like blame was put on her. And then Other Fish, which is like very much to an extreme of this guy, again, like very angry, borderline abusive, jealous, all of that stuff. So yeah, is your, I guess, belief system on is this, again, you're just putting this negativity down, but in your own mind you don't necessarily think that, or do you feel like this reflects many of the issues that women have to go through um in relationships?
I think especially right now, there's a lot of pessimism about relationships. And although this might come as a surprise to some of your viewers, I've never actually been in a relationship. So I'm really just pulling from what I hear. And this is kind of like an aggregate of that pessimism. So I take these stories as a reflection of the world and the state of things. Like I know, at least secondhand, how hard it is out there. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you've heard all of my stories. So I wouldn't, well, these are extreme to say the least. I definitely can see where some of these are coming from. The other fish, I think, was really fascinating because it all stems from jealousy, but I think the blurb is right. He takes self-improvement literally. He gets on her for being with this kind of nerdy guy. She's like, I just complimented his blue eyes. And then the next you see, he's got his blue eyes. So he kind of takes these things. So it's this idea, I think, that men think that women think that they're not like good enough, and so they're trying to take these different qualities or morph themselves, be a chameleon, instead of being authentic. But then of course, an authentic self might also not be the best. But yeah, very interesting. And I think also we struggle with we as in females, I think, and I don't want to generalize, but this emotional connection with men. I think it's gotten better, but obviously, sometimes men think that it's effeminate to show that emotional side and be clued into your mental health as well. And so I think we see that with Revenant Lane, and the protocol to a certain extent. Okay, so I do want to talk about the world life.
The one I've been waiting for.
Yeah. So as a peek behind the curtain, I give him a hard time for this. Um, Partially because I very much think that Harry is an insert for this.
Is an incel? Yeah,
No,
no.
not an incel, an insert
Oh,
for
okay.
this character. Would you disagree? I'm trying to pull it up now. Oh,
Well, look, he looks exactly like me, but that was just by accident. I did not say, "Hey, Alex, can you draw me into this
by
comic?" If
accident.
I had to choose to be anybody in this book, it would not be that guy.
Okay. I do have a critique. I
Okay.
don't know if you wrote it in this way. And this is going to sound like I'm kidding about this critique, but I'll explain why I find this to be a critique. There is a moment, I guess you can see a little something, where the man, I'm trying to think of what his name is. I have it pulled up here. Mr. Lee's the neighbor, who is the
Is that
Claude
right?
Bart abroad. Oh, Claude. Okay. So
Claude,
Claude, Barbara is the name of the doll or the
the model,
android
the model,
synthetic.
yeah.
Okay. And then Mr. Lee. Claude is naked because he was in flagrante with Barbara. And you can kind of see like a shape in shadows, but it is not revealed. And yet, Barbara, even though she's kind of Barbie in the way of like you don't see everything,
Mhm.
you do see enough. You do see the breasts and everything. Was that a conscious choice to not reveal a penis? And if so, why? This is
It
a bugaboo for me. So I would like to I would like to know why.
it was not. I didn't
Oh,
think to write it into the script, and it didn't occur to me. I mean, I should have caught it, I guess, and been like, "Hey, there should be." But honestly, when he came back naked, I was like, "That's really funny," because that also was not in the script. He was
oh, okay.
not supposed to be naked for the whole thing, but I was like, "That's really funny." Um, so yeah, I think, but maybe it would have been, I don't know, too monstrous or too grotesque
Mm,
to see the penis. I don't know, just having flashes of Lady Snowblood. Um, Yeah, I'd have to chew on that one. Not too
yeah.
long.
I know. I don't think about genitalia for too long. The reason why I bring this up is just because I feel like in cinema in particular, in we could say TV because TV has certainly
Yeah.
it's got some of its mature things, and comics, it's just like the female nudity to male nudity ratio is just like really lopsided. And I'm not necessarily looking to find the penises, but as you know, because we just watched 28 years later, I am like, oh, wow, yeah, it's like we're finally trying to even things up. So I almost wish that we would have seen something, if only
Mm.
to kind of equal that out. So this we get into a debate about this. I think now, listen, Is Mr. Lee to blame for the murder of Claude?
He's the only one in the story who's committed a crime, at least
Okay.
under our current legal system, because he basically, uh, I mean, he caused this whole tragedy. Like, it's awful to have a noisy neighbor. Certainly, I know what that's like. But yeah, he set this guy up to be killed. He's a sociopath for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you consider him sociopath. I do have some empathy for him because I think he did care for Barbara, or at least how Barbara was treated. Do you disagree with that?
I think that, yeah, I mean, the genesis of the World Wife, I think, started way back in 2014 when I saw The Revenant. Because by that time, I was kind of like, I was very much aware of, the politics of gender in film. And in that movie, there's a scene where Leo comes up on some French fur traders who are raping a native woman. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for him to intervene on this. And I resented the movie for making me feel like rooting for this to happen. Like in a lot of movies, we just sort of create this scenario where women are victimized in order for men to be heroic. And so the story is basically like a deconstruction of that. And I think that, like, I suppose there are good intentions there, like you want to save somebody who's a victim, but I also think that it's mostly about it is a fantasy that is meant to stroke the male ego.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why there's that note about how like his father favored his sister and it was like he almost didn't end up with a hunting rifle and so there's like a lot of insecurity there already.
Mm,
Um, and so like he does help her in a sense. He gives her some self-defense, but ultimately it's just for the ultimate act.
right. Um, do you blame Barbara at all?
No, no,
Okay.
it's just a robot.
Okay. Well, before when I said that, you said something like, but she's a killer. And I'm like, oh my God,
She's like, Yella,
she's a killer. Yeah. It does remind me, this came out before, but it does remind me of the Beep Boop movie. What was that called?
companion.
Yes,
Yeah,
because wasn't she upgraded to a certain extent for some violent
yeah.
capabilities? Yeah. It is like really scare like unnerving though that I don't think similar to Black Mirror, I don't think that we're far from this sort of situation.
Hmm.
The fact that Claude purposely got a quote unquote combat model that could take the torment like is really dark. But I feel like this is again not far from reality, which is all the more disturbing. And then yeah, I just think about do these sorts of things beings have rights or do they not, are they just like artificial? And no, they don't. Which will be really interesting to see if we have any scientific debates once that sort of thing happens.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. Yeah, that is something that Donovan and I did talk about on like an old episode of Questions We Don't Have Answers. And I think it was, well, it's always a discussion about like whether or not fantasies can be dangerous. And I think, well, I don't remember where we fell down on it, but I don't mean to uh, declare that Claude is like entirely blameless in this situation. Like, I think what he's doing is terrible for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Is there a question that you wish I would have asked? Or is there a story that you really want to talk about more in depth?
That's a good question. Let me just flip through real quick. Um, well, I will say, and maybe I can, oh, maybe, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but just as a final note, I guess, this is billed as a sci-fi horror anthology and website, but these stories are obviously not just sci-fi and horror. There are like some fantasy ones in there and some that have no supernatural, like My Devil. Um,
Yeah.
so that was kind of like a marketing thing. Like I just have to come up with a label for this, and that's generally the space that I want to play in. But obviously, like these are just the stories that I want to tell. So it's the kind of transcend genre labels, unfortunately, or not. But I think that will make it hard to sell this book, as we shall find out. But yeah,
I
we'll
have more
see.
optimism than you do in this case. Can you give us a tease as to any of the upcoming stories that you have?
Yeah, sure. I have two in the works. Definitely wanted to have like at least a tease on the website for when we're at the comic convention so that people don't just pull up the website and find exactly what they already have in front of them. One of them is called The Animal King, and it takes place in like Puritan times, kind of like The Witch. And it's about a guy who resorts to black magic to save his ailing wife. And of course, things get ironic and tragic from him for there, or for him for there. And then the other one is called Your Brain is Mine, which is takes place in the 1950s, after World War II, but during the atomic race with the Soviet Union. And a guy gets mutated by radiation, turns into a zombie who eats brains and gains knowledge, as Josh Brolin said once upon a time. Very excited about that. That's only in the concepting phase, though, so that could be a while.
Okay. And yes, where can people find you both physically soon as well as on the interwebs?
Yes, you can find me and my manager at Baltimore Comic Con the weekend of October 17th. I think it's a
Yeah.
few other days.
17th, 18th, 19th. Yeah.
That'll be fun or a disaster. And you can find these comics to read for free at martiansunmagazine.com. I'm also on Instagram uh, at Martian Sun Magazine. I think they're underscores, and YouTube. I don't have any content there though. I'm still trying to figure out how to market this thing. And I just want to say to Stella, my friend, thank you. I felt the heat in the hot seat here today, but I
Oh,
think this was very good exculpatory. Is that the word? Exculpatory questions.
sure.
Brought out the best in me. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I did text, as another peek behind the curtain. I texted the mayor, as you're aware, and I said, I think the question was something along the lines of, I'm interviewing your precious baby. Um, should I take it easy on him or go for the jugular? And she responded the latter. And I thought, I'll absolutely go for the jugular. But no, it was a pleasure to talk with you. I mean, I feel like I've been on this journey with you to a certain extent because, during our weekly either gaming session or movie or TV sessions, you'll update me on what you've been doing, and I'll ask questions and things like that. And it was nice to sit down and read all of them together in rapid succession to see those connections and things like that and do more of a deep dive. And it was just nice to talk to you and get the word out because again I really hope that people give this a shot and get that graphic novel is 9.99
Mhm.
9.99 help this man out
How could you beat that price?
100% it deserves a spot on your shelf for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, remember you can send. Oh, yes. Yes, be sure. So if you come to the table, what table is it?
I think I-10 or something.
I-10. Yes. I will be there on Saturday. I will be cosplaying for the first time ever, which is shocking. As Claire Redfield. I'm excited about that. And I've told Harry that I am dictating his outfits as well. So you can come and see what he's wearing. And we got, or you have some freebies. And stop by and chat with us and look at the things. Yeah, I'm excited. And then behind Harry, as you can see, he's got his backdrop. Yeah, so
Looking
you'll
good.
be able to see us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, well, send any questions or comments to backrolltheoracle@gmail.com. Did you give an email?
Contact at martiansunmagazine.com, I believe.
Okay, there you go. Like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter at Backroll the Oracle and subscribe to the show on YouTube for an uncut version, which you get to see here. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Backroll the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And until next time,
Fly. Oh, God, I can't.
oh no. Oh no. We were so close.
I know.
And until next time, what's happening? Do you not? This is not your first
I know.
rodeo. Get
I
it together.
know.
Do I need to feed you the line?
Yeah.
Okay, it's fly on, Babs lovers. Okay.
Fly.
Okay. And until next time.
Fly on, Babs lovers.